So, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6. I talked a good bit last time about fasting. Here's what Jesus said in verse 16. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. A theme that comes out over and over and over again in Jesus' teaching, and then later in Paul's and James and John and Jude and, well, the rest of the New Testament, is the idea of the sincerity and honesty of a person's heart is what matters to God. Well, the Pharisees, the hypocrites, and that's a really strong word, and you've heard so much about hypocrite. I think I don't very much need to break it open and parse it out. The key is they are insincere. The old Greek theater was the costume was a mask, and the person playing whatever part would wear the mask of that part. Well, Jesus levels a strong accusation and rebuke when he says, the hypocrites. I'll talk about this, and I'm sure if you've been in the church for any length of time, you probably heard this as well. But I've had people say, or heard people say, well, I don't bother with church down with all the hypocrites. Well, I can understand that. I don't remember who it was that I heard this from, but they were a minister, a pastor, and they had heard it, and their response was, hey, it's no problem. Really, there's always room for one more hypocrite. Of course, that's kind of cute, but I don't think it's going to win any hypocrite's heart over. Well, okay. The hypocrite. What don't look somber as the hypocrites do. Last time I said it's not if you fast, it's when you fast. And he doesn't even say how you fast. But he said when you fast, don't look somber as hypocrites do. Part of their practice was, and this would be consistent, I think, with how a hypocrite is, which, let's back the wagon up a minute. I'm a hypocrite. I don't want to be. I don't take delight in it, but I have to say, it would be dishonest of me to say otherwise. I am hopeful that God will continue to work in my life and I will become less and less hypocritical. But I am, and I don't want to necessarily make you mad, but you are too, to some degree. Well, here's the thing. A hypocrite wants to look a certain way because there is an amount of honor or recognition or something for looking that way. They want everybody, these hypocrites wanted anybody take a look at them and go, oh, they must be fasting, right? So Jesus says they disfigure their faces to show others they're fasting. It's all about, I want you to think this about me, and I'll go as far as disfiguring my face, which don't necessarily think it was some horrible, or even makeup or whatever. I just think you can make yourself look miserable. If you've ever had a teenager, that's There's some people that are really good at it. And I think that's what these folks would have done. And then he says, truly I tell you, they've received their reward in full. So what would their reward have been? The recognition of other people, that the opinion of other people, this is what they were most after, I think, is that the opinion of other people, having looked at them and realized they're so devoted, they are just so righteous, they're so godly. That's the only reward they're going to get. And if that's all you're after, that's kind of a decent deal. But that's not all we're after. He goes on in verse 17. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so it will not be obvious to others that you're fasting. In other words, be normal. Be yourself. Comb your hair. Take care of yourself. And when you fast, people around you shouldn't know you're fasting by taking a look at you, because you're not trying to project an image. When you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you're fasting, but only to your Father who's unseen. See, the whole point of fasting is to connect with God. And if my fasting doesn't do that, then the only value it has is some kind of social recognition. But when I fast, my Father, who is unseen, well, it'll be obvious to him. And he's the one. It's between he and me. All right. And then Jesus goes on, and this is a pretty powerful statement. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. He doesn't say how, but it's clear. There's no mistaking it. God will reward you. Your Father sees what is done in secret. That's a sword with two edges. First of all, I grew up where the threat was always, God will see. It was a big threat. And that's true. God will see. But that's not the context here. Jesus is saying, when you fast, you basically need to make it a secret between you and God. And God, who sees everything done anywhere, including things done in secret, he will reward you. I suppose there are an infinite number of ways that God would reward us for fasting. For me, I really only think of one principal reason for fasting, and I already shared it. It's to connect with God on a deeper level. I'm not doing this. I don't think I'm fasting in order to get God's attention. Are you kidding? Come on. The whole Bible gives you every indication that you cannot not be in his attention. That's not even possible for human beings, but it is God's nature. It's impossible for me to not have God's attention. But it is possible through fasting that I develop a greater sensitivity and awareness of him, so that in terms of fasting, it's not just for the medicinal purpose, That if that occurs, and it probably will, that's a good thing. But that's not my point. When I fast, I don't do this medicinal fasting. And as I've said before, I don't fast often in order to draw close to God. But when I do, one of the rewards is James says it this way, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And that's what happens. I'll tell you one of the other aspects for me when I fast, I think part of the reward is I see myself in a different light. One of the things I every single time have discovered about myself is I am a slave to my hunger. I don't think about it that much through the day on a normal basis about how much my appetites govern my life. But when I fast, oh boy, do I ever. And there's a reward in that. It's not, for me, it's not that, for God to like me, I need to not have so many appetites. No, I don't believe that. But I do know for me to continue to grow and develop in Him, according to His design, I need to master my appetites. Okay? Fasting brings to front and center the degree to which I have not done that. Okay. There are people who say, okay, your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. That God will give you what you ask when you pray in your fast. That's not here. All right. Verse 19, subject changes. Pretty much no transition. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. In Jesus' day, there were banks. They weren't very much like our banks today. But you could put your money in a bank. More commonly, you kept it with you in whatever you could make of a safe place. And what Jesus is doing here is drawing a word picture. Normally, you would, wrap it in something or other. In our day, the old days, right? They'd roll their money up and put it in a coffee can and bury it outside somewhere, or they'd put it way down in the cellar, or they would put it where nobody would ever think to look in order to steal it from them. Well, Jesus said, hey, wherever you put it, there are moths and vermin, and they're not friendly toward your treasures. When Jesus wrote this and said, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, he's not talking about what most of the time we think of as treasures. Jesus lived in a culture of barter. Yes, it also was a culture of currency. Of course, no paper money. It was all coinage. And there are some things about a coinage monetary culture that are actually difficult. One of them is different locations, different regions had their own coinage. And so if you're going to do business from one to the other, you had to have this coin changed into that kind of coin in order to make the transaction. That's why there were money changers at the temple. Well, Jesus is not just talking about money. He's talking about treasures. We're going to come back to that next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.